엘살바도르가 위기를 겪고 있다는 기사들이 쏟아져 나오고 있습니다. 하지만 우리는 양쪽 편의 이야기를 모두 들어보고 직접 판단을 해볼 필요가 있습니다. 부켈레 대통령이 직접 이야기하는 현재 상황을 함께 들어봅시다.
Welcome to Tucker Carlson. Today we live in a moment in history where a lot of people genuinely and sincerely despise their own leaders. They don't trust them. They don't believe their leaders are acting on their behalf. They don't think their leaders are competent. They don't think their leaders are decent people. Virtually all of the developed world is still purportedly democratic, but you will look a long time to find a president of any country who has overwhelming support from his own voters. That's just true. It's very odd if you think about it. So we thought it might be interesting to speak to someone who is, no exaggeration, the single most popular democratically elected president of any country in the world by far. A man who enjoys support from his population measured outside sources in the high 80s to the 90%. That's how much support he has. Contrast that with our own president, whose support hovers in the mid-30s. But Nayib Bukele, the president of El Salvador, is overwhelmingly popular. Why is that exactly? Well, he's agreed to spend the next hour telling us, and we are honored to have him join us in studio. President Bukele, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Tucker, for having me.
So I'm going to just ask you the obvious question, why you're so popular, but let me just give you one guess that I thought. We had dinner last night until 1 a.m. Here in our barn, and I was talking to our producers after the dinner, and you're not the first head of state that we've talked to or had dinner with. You talked less about yourself than any politician I think I've ever eaten with. So I don't know if that was a pose. You kept it going for like 5 hours, which was impressive. Maybe because you don't make it all about you. Maybe that's one of the reasons you're so popular.
I don't know. Probably if we have talked about me for 5 hours, it would be very boring, or we have cut short the dinner probably.
Well, politicians talk about themselves endlessly.
Yeah, that's why.
They're never bored by it.
Yeah, they never bore themselves, but they probably bore everybody else. So, you know.
It's interesting.
We really kept it going because we talked some, not only me, but we talked about very interesting issues regarding the world.
But you seemed interested in them. You weren't.
Of course, because, you know, civilization is in a very important moment in history.
Yes.
Human civilization, of course, and you know, it's very interesting to talk about it and to think about it. And every country and every society in the world is part of this human civilization, and you know, the path that every micro society takes into that civilization, it has to do a lot with our understanding of it. So I think it's important to talk about it and discuss it and to understand it a little, more so than talking about, you know, politics or...
Yeah, you didn't even, for a political leader, you didn't even mention politics, which I thought was very, very interesting and said something very good about you. But I'm going to assume that you're so popular because you've improved your country.
Yes.
That's why leaders are popular.
I mean, that's the main thing a politician should do.
Yes.
It's work, right?
Yeah, of course. And I've been to El Salvador 3 times in my life, twice while you were president, and I've seen that you have improved it. And we did a whole documentary on how you reduced the crime rate in El Salvador from the highest murder rate in the world, pretty much, to one of the lowest. But I wonder, just big picture for a second, how do you, as the head of state, measure the health of a country?
Well, I would think there's indicators that will measure the health of a country. The World Bank and IMF and the UN and international organizations will measure the health of a country based on, you know, GDP or economic output, or they will use this types of measurements that are, you know, they're totally fake because they don't really measure if a country is doing good or is doing bad.
Yes. They're fake.
Yeah, they're fake. Yeah.
How is GDP fake?
Oh well, if we're two guys here, and I say, "Hey, Tucker, I'll pay you $1,000 if you drink this glass of water," right? And you say, "Okay, sure," and you drink it. I pay you $1,000, and then you say, "Hey, I'll pay you $1,000 if you drink my glass of water." So I drink your glass of water, and you pay me $1,000. So basically, nobody's any richer. I just got the same $1,000 I gave you in the first place, so we just drank 2 glasses of water. But according to GDP, you just increased GDP by $2,000 and you created 2 jobs. Right? So you just, and really, if you report that to the IRS, you just created 2 jobs, 2 $1,000 jobs of drinking water people, and we increased economic output by $2,000 by creating a service that's drinking your water service in twice. So, and that established with a value of $1,000 because the market value is $1,000. So I paid you $1,000 for it, and you pay me $1,000 for it. So of course this is it's an exaggeration, although it would be measured like that if you report it to the IRS. But it just portrays how these indicators don't really measure the health of a society, and common sense issues that you would think it would measure the health of a society, they don't measure them anymore, or they do measure them, but they don't. It's not in the top column. It's just just like an extra factor. But it doesn't really make any sense because what really people want is to be good, to be with their family, to be safe, and those things aren't measured anymore. So you would think that that those indicators would be of great value, and they have some value, but they mostly fake, and they don't really represent the health of a society.
So I think that's very wise, and also there's quite a bit of pressure on heads of state to play along with fake measurements. Correct?
Yes,
There's lots of international.
I mean,
bodies.
we have to play along with them, too. Of course, everybody does.
But as someone who runs a country, how do you personally measure the health of your own country?
Well, we have the current measurements that I just said they just told you they are fake, but we still measure them. We have to, and because international organizations will base their predictions about the country with those measurements. But you have other measurements which I think are more important, like for example, safety.
Yeah.
Or crime rate, or homeless rate, or jobs, or inflation, or what about the important values of society? How are they doing?
Yes.
For example, right now the whole world economic system is trying to destroy some of the values that are more important to human beings, and not only to human beings morally, but financially. For example, savings. Savings will be a very important economic measurement, right? I mean, it's very important. Supposedly, it's very important for people to save money, right? If you earn $10,000, you should spend $8,000 and save $2,000.
Yes.
Instead of the opposite, right? Spend $12,000 and $2,000. But right now, savings, the concept of savings has been destroyed because it doesn't make any sense to save money anymore. Because if you save money, let's say if you're in the 80s and you saved $50,000, which you could buy a house with at that time, and right now with $50,000, you can maybe change the floor. Yeah. So if you saved $50,000, then you have been robbed of 90% of your money now, because you could probably buy a house in the 80s that was maybe worth $600,000, $700,000 right now. So you were robbed of your money, and by the system, with devaluation, with inflation,
yes,
with printing more money, with no, they say the Federal Reserve is nothing federal and has no reserves, right? So they do print more money, and they rob you from your wealth and from your savings, and that's immoral. But it's not only immoral, but it also destroys some basic economic principles, like, for example, saving or your pension. I would guess you're very fluent in the American dream.
Yes.
You work hard. You can buy a home, send your kids to college, and have a good retirement. But now, if you save for retirement and you saved all your life, maybe for 40 years working, now you come into age and say, well, now my savings are not enough to sustain me, and that's because you were robbed. So, and you were legally robbed. So then those types of measurements, which are not only not measured anymore, but are also being destroyed, the fundamentals of them. So it's hard to try to fix a society where the system itself is trying to destroy the basic fundamentals that make a society successful. And you would guess what's the purpose on it. I really don't know, but I don't have any proof of their intent, but it's very clear, and there's proof of what they are doing.
So, obviously, you're opposed to crime.
Yes.
You've been very tough on it. You lowered the crime rates in El Salvador. So no one's excusing crime. On the other hand, if I walk into a liquor store or a bodega and hold it up with a gun and steal $3,000, I go to jail, and I should.
Yeah.
But if I devalue the U.S. currency and make old people penniless at scale, I don't go to jail.
No, you don't. It's like, imagine if you go. Let's portray a movie example, like a bank robbery, right? These guys go into a bank, they go in with guns, they steal all the money in the bank, the whole vault. I mean, they open the vault, they get all the money within the vault, they take it, they don't leave a penny in the bank. So you will say, oh, this bank robbers, they robbed the bank, right? But a bank, any bank will have, I don't know, let's say $500 billion, one bank, right?
Yes.
They can have $500 billion.
In total assets.
Yeah, total assets, $500 billion. Now, they are only required to keep $50 billion in assets, in liquidity.
Yes.
The rest can be, in loans, real estate. They can have the other money invested, right?
Yes.
Mostly in loans to their clients. So the bank only has 10% liquidity, which is $50 billion. Now, out of those $50 billion, 90% of it, it's online. It's zeros in a screen.
Yes.
It's not really cash, right?
Yes.
Bills and coins. So you would think maybe 10% of those 50 billion, they have it in cash.
Yes.
That would be a lot, but let's say they have 10% in cash, in bills and coins. So that would be 5 billion. But if this huge bank has, let's say, 200 branches. So they have, offices all over, in Florida, New York, in California. They have branches all over. So they will have, 2.5 million? That would be, like 500 billion, 50 billion in assets, 5 billion in cash, and then divided by 200, that would be 5 times 5, that would be like 25 million per bolt.
Yeah.
But that would be 10% of 10%, that would be 1%, and then this will be like 0.1% of 1%. That would be the equivalent of the bank robbers, what the bank robbers took. So they would take 0.1% of 1%. Let aside that they would have insurance and they would get all the money back. They just robbed the bank out of 0.5% of 1% of their net worth, of their assets. They will go, rightfully, to jail for 20 or 30 years. But if the Fed prints $10 trillion out of thin air because there's no reserves that would, support this new printing of new money, they will just rob you of, 20% of your savings, of all human, all people they use as dollars, including all Americans, including all Salvadorans, by the way, because we use the U.S. Dollar as a currency. They will not pay a penny or a fine or anything because it's a legal theft.
But it's a crime anyway.
Well,
it's a moral crime.
It's a moral crime. It's not a legal crime, and that's why I think there's civilization changes coming, just because people that's been happening for quite a while now,
yes.
Probably since the 70s. But right now, people are starting to waking up and seeing these things and saying, "Oh, hold on, I maybe don't want to be on board these things. And of course, they don't want to, I think it's probably a new economic system is on the works. And it's going to be messy because you will have, the Western powers with one economic system. You will have probably the BRICS with another economic system. And the BRICS are growing, and they'll probably be more than half of the GDP soon, not only because the countries are growing itself, but they are inviting Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Nigeria, Argentina. So if you add up all those up, it will be above 50% of GDP. So they'll be the greatest economic power. And they will try to do an alternate economic system. I don't think people that don't want the Fed to devaluate are going to go to the other system, because it's not, it's not attractive for them to change from the Fed to Russia. It's not,
right,
or to the OPEC plus. It doesn't make sense for them. But you will see more and more people in the West, or what we call the West, trying to go into alternative systems that are more independent, that are unconfiscable, that are uncensored, and that are totally decentralized. So if you go into there, you would think, in principle, of course, we have to see, but in principle, you would think that you'd be safe of having your wealth taken away by a political decision.
So our Fed policy affects the entire world, every country in the world.
Definitely.
But it affects El Salvador directly and immediately in the same way it affects us, because you trade in the US dollar.
Yes, a little worse, because we do get all the devaluation and we get all the inflation, but we get none of the spending. So,
you can't print it.
We can't print it. Yeah, we can print the US dollars.
Fair, good point.
Yeah.
So you have and so you've chosen a new path very famously. Tell us what you've done and why.
Well, we haven't changed the fundamentals of our economy just because you don't change the fundamentals of an economy from one day to another, because that would be very messy.
Yes.
Even if you do things right, it would be messy, and you don't want mess, right? Yeah. You want things to grow, you want the economy to grow, you want people to be happy, you don't want people to, the economy to do well, you want your country to do well. So we're doing small steps to change some things and to give people different options. We're not changing everything right away, but we're giving people different options. So we made Bitcoin legal tender. We're the only country in the world where Bitcoin is legal tender. I mean, Bitcoin is used all over the world, even in countries where it is banned, just because you can't ban it. I mean, it's uncensorable. You can't, even if you want to censor it, you can't.
Yes.
But the only country in the world where Bitcoin is legal tender is El Salvador. That gives us an advantage in the new economic system that's in the works, and we have had some benefits from it. We have increased tourism by 95%, and that's in part because of Bitcoin. There's a lot of Bitcoiners that want to go to the only country where Bitcoin is legal tender. We have Bitcoin conferences, etc. So we're getting a lot of tourism for it. We're getting a lot of private investment also, because there are some people escaping, the censorship, or they're trying to escape the laws, trying to ban this new technology. So they go into countries that are more open to these technologies, and of course they would go to a country that is not only open, but has actually embraced the currency as its own. So we get a lot of investment, we'll get a lot of tourism, and the other thing we get is that we get some rebranding. Because El Salvador, if a lot of people don't know anything about El Salvador, but if some people know something about El Salvador, it would be bad things like MS-13,
yes,
right, or the Civil War in the 80s.
Of course.
But if you're, if you're a Bitcoiner, or if you're into technology, or into new economic systems, or into unconfiscable wealth, then you will listen and you will learn about El Salvador in a different light. We have a project of building a new city. We're mining Bitcoin with the power of volcanoes. So these types of things are not only projects that are very important for the development of our country, but they're also it's also a rebranding. a rebranding that will probably cost hundreds of millions of dollars, and for us it will cost nothing because it's just making bold and good decisions, and people will like them. So
People will like them, but then, I mean, our current economic system has a lot of stakeholders.
oh, they hate it, yeah.
They hate it. Who hates it?
Well, the IMF, the
Yeah.
World Bank, the Fed, and some of most of the, if not all of the economic publications, you name it, Bloomberg, CNBC, Financial Times, Forbes, we have got a lot of bad press and fake news and FUD, like FUD, like Bitcoiners call it, from this financial publications. They will print lies. But there's something special about lies is that they don't last they don't last long. So when people realize that these things don't make any sense, or they see from themselves the difference, like you, for example, you have gone 3 times to El Salvador in different times, and so they see things into a different light, and they see reality. So reality always imposes itself over lies, just because it's real. So it's easier to uphold it, or it's easier to show it or to demonstrate it's true. So we're taking some heat, but if you look a little back, they didn't care about us before. So right now, yes, we do have bad publications in Forbes and Financial Times, but they weren't writing about El Salvador before. It's not like we lose anything. So, and there's other publications writing interesting stories about El Salvador. Some guy this is a joke, of course, it's not, but he just said El Salvador has the most documentaries per capita. Because there's a lot of people doing documentaries about Bitcoin adoption, about surf, because we have a lot of great surfing in El Salvador. So they have a lot of security measures we're implementing against MS-13. So we're getting a lot of good press, and we're getting bad press too. But the guys printing the bad press didn't write anything about El Salvador before. So it's not that we're losing their audiences, and also their audiences are diminishing.
Right.
Because they're not even. It's not even close. They're not as important as they used to be. They're actually almost irrelevant, but they have their legacy names. But who buys a Time magazine anymore? I don't know anybody. But before it was a very important thing in a kiosk to buy a Newsweek or a Time magazine. But now who buys a magazine anymore? Who subscribes to a magazine online? Nobody. it's just really names. Legacy names in their Twitter accounts. So it's not really, they're not really mainstream media anymore. They're just accounts in social media with a legacy name of being mainstream media.
And you don't seem to care what they say.
Well, yeah. I have learned not to care. But of course, at the beginning, I do care. I did care because for me, I thought they were important. Now that I see they aren't, and since they are not treating us that well, I've learned not to care. And I think it's better because and if you look at the ratings, for example, and the amount of subscribers they have, it's really ridiculous. Nobody's watching them. Really, nobody watches CNN anymore. It's like, we were talking yesterday about in El Salvador, we have this news show, of course, local. And the news, the news show in
like nightly news.
Yeah, the nightly news, the main nightly news, local nightly news.
Channel 4.
Yeah, Channel 4. They have like 1 million viewers every night. Out of 7 million people that live in El Salvador, we have 1 million viewers, which is not much. 14% of the population is watching. And then CNN, in prime time, we have like 500,000 viewers. So Channel 4 back in El Salvador has twice the ratings of CNN in the whole United States with 300 million people. So,
who cares?
It doesn't make any sense for them to be airing their shows anymore. I mean, it's
Why do you think they do?
well, because they're still sponsors that think that people are watching. It's like, I don't know, probably senior citizen products that they think that they're the people in charge of their marketing, they think that people still watch CNN because they watched CNN before, and probably they're not even watching CNN anymore. So, I mean, they're just airing this thing, and they will come up to senses and say, okay, let's stop airing this. It happens with some magazines and some publications. They just stop printing and they go online. It's their way of saying, okay, we know nobody's buying the magazine anymore. So it will happen.
So CNN will become a Twitter account.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it will probably become a online broadcasting before, but we know it failed with CNN Plus, so it will it'll become a Twitter account. Yeah.
So